A summoner has disconnected.
That we have this all figured out, we'll see what they will elect for in terms of side selection.
Yeah, and just a reminder, Ember has moved over to the more typical thing that we see in pro play, where you pick whether you want the side selection or the choice selection first or not, given that extra option over to the side of Triple T's fan club. Obviously, most of the time that just means red side picks first. Most of the time, obviously, not always the case. But yeah, we'll see how that goes through. But as just a little bit of context coming into this week 7 of the Magma League. We have 3 teams sitting at 4-2, one of which is Triple T's fan club, and 4 teams sitting on 3-3, one of which is Regicide Duskfall. So 7 of our 8 teams all within 1 game of each other. Unfortunately, we can't quite have an overall view of all 4 games this week going on at the same time, considering how close these teams are together. This was the choice in the end, but both these teams a lot to play for in terms of seeding Triple T's fan club, technically sitting 3rd when it comes to game score, looking to be able to try to claim that first seed. Meanwhile, Regicide Duskfall, a loss here for them would could very easily put them towards the bottom, even as the final seed of and going into playoffs.
Yeah, I thought everything has been so tight. We really are expecting this to be a close game because of how these teams have been able to contest each other within the league so far. And of course, if Triple T does win this, staying alive in playoffs, staying alive for a chance at #1 seed certainly would be a great opportunity for them. That's definitely going to be the stress on their backs. And then on the other side of things, you had alluded to it, Regicide needs to be able to win this. They can create another 4-3 contender in the standings. And of course, with so many teams currently on that 4-3 podium, it really does make it ever so much tight for a playoff spot. And I mean, I don't know, right? It definitely is a close game, but of course, with Triple T as the team currently standing a little bit higher in terms of the standings, we are going to be expecting them to be able to take a win tonight.
Yeah, having a 9-5 game record, currently sitting 3rd as a result. We'll see if they can use their earlier season form Going into this one, we still have not quite gotten word on what they have selected first. Actually, coming into we will see now. Triple T's fan club selecting first pick, Regicide Duskfall, opting to move to blue.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing them choosing that. I mean, it's not a big surprise, and we'll see what this does inevitably entail. In terms of the picks and bans, we're getting straight on into the action. Triple T's fan club's taking a decent bit of time to be able to elect for their first bans. They're inevitably going to go for the Tristana, something with a bit of assassination compatibility with a little bit of that mobility as well with the rocket jump. A lot of versatility you get with the Tristana. I like that as the opening ban. It kind of gives the idea that they're going to be liking to play towards their bot side throughout this game.
Yeah, it's also one that Avo does quite play a lot of. Going to be taking away comfort relatively early on, though Avo does have a decently sized champ pool in terms of what they've played so far, so it'll be a little bit difficult to fully ban them all. Regicide Duskfall not hitting the first two bans. I was not given any word about them missing anything coming to this one, but I'm presumably means that we will be having an E-sub and are very likely to miss their first round of bans, unfortunately. So yeah, they go and pick and hurry through, missing their first one, so we do get confirmed that they will be having an E-sub.
Yeah, and honestly, it is definitely surprising seeing that because this is a really, really important game. So to have to use a sub this early on within the season, or it's not this early on, but this late into the season where these games mean so much more, especially due to the way that the, group stage ended up going to the point where everyone is so close and contested in terms of their current amounts of wins to losses. So to have to use a sub and also to have to get all of your bans removed certainly is a little bit of a tragedy in the making. The Orianna as the first pick for Regicide Duskfall certainly is a nice opening, right? It does give them a little bit of that DPS output that is always something that's pretty positive to get. They're likely going to look to try and put in a Nocturne or something of that level to go in with it. And on the other side of things, the Camille, that's also pretty flexible. We'll likely see that either in the top side or support. I'm really curious on how Triple T's fan club is inevitably going to try and play that out. It kind of gives me the idea it's going to be in the support category, seeing as they banned the Tristana, which would likely be able to work well into it. However, obviously, we don't really have any confirmation just yet.
Way also getting locked in for the side of Triple T's fan club can equally be flexed down to the bottom lane. However, that would be more of a carry pick. I think that one's perhaps a little bit less likely since Nightmare, their mid laner, does play a lot of Way and would be a very strong comfort pick for them. But still, again, in terms of access to flexibility, okay, just hard locking the Yumi's area on the side of Regicide Duskfall. No hesitation whatsoever. They know exactly what they want.
That's a pretty crazy bot lane, I can't lie. I mean, I haven't seen the Yuumi Zeri in a long, long time within the scene, and of course, maybe it'll be able to work if they can pilot it well, but it certainly does have a lot of question marks in my mind. I guess the idea is going to be looking to play a bit of a dive comp, get the tempo fast, get in aggressive, and take a sweep over your opponents. But of course, on the other side of things, Triple T's fan club gonna read it and elect to try and go a little bit tankier so that the heavy executes onto one or two players isn't going to be able to take somebody down nearly as fast, and they won't be able to burn the players down with a Skarner, somebody who's going to likely be able to disrupt them, especially when it comes to their ult. They're going to be able to gather a lot of damage, one would have to imagine, but we will just have to wait and see. Of course, Regicide, they still haven't opted in for their jungler, and so that's going to allow Triple T's fan club to be able to ban out the Nocturne, which definitely does rise a little bit of suspicion in my mind for what Regicide Duskfall is going to be opting in for. You'd imagine seeing the Orianna pick and not the Nocturne to go with it. It's going to be a situation where they no longer feel the need to run the Nocturne. If they did, then they likely would have elected in towards that for their first phase of picks rather than just letting that slide through the cracks and having Triple T's fan club banning it out.
Yeah, it was one of those things that when you see the Orianna locked in as a first pick, the assumption is that the quick follow-up would be the Orianna locked in, that you would see the Nocturne immediately taken away on the other side, since that knockwave combo is so potent. It's interesting to see that Regicide Duskfall didn't go for it. They do have a few good options available to still pair up with it. The Jarvan is the first one that comes to my mind as a really good ball delivery option. it's not going to come through the support role as the Yumi's already locked in. But in terms of bans, it's been interesting to see that with the dropping up of available was the Orin takeaway from Triple T's fan club, and so that will be the option still available for Regicide Duskfall. We'll see if they go for it here, but in the meantime, Gnar locked in blind for Triple T.
The Gnar makes a lot of sense. They still are a little bit worried about the Zeri Yumi, and of course with the Gnar you get the tankiness to be able to deal with it. The Wukong selected. Ooh. That's interesting. I think this could work. However, of course, the big thing you're going to be getting is going to be the armor penetration, and especially against the Skarner and Gnar, that's going to really work wonders, one would have to imagine. We'll see whether or not they are going to be able to conclude well with their final pick. Likely going to have to get a top laner involved. What that's going to look like, it is the Dr. Mundo. So they get a bit of tankiness to the composition, and now Triple D's fan club gets to opt in for either their mid lane or bot lane, one would have to imagine, dependent on where that Hui is acting.
Yeah, we will figure out that confirmation with the lock-in from the side of Triple T, but on side of Regicide Duskfall is Zeri Yumi with the Wukong Dr. Mundo being able to create space with the amount of CC on the Wukong and the amount of health available to the Dr. Mundo. We hope to see the Zeri zooming around really fast with Yumi on top, but Azir going to be the lock-in for Triple T, meaning that Hui fairly likely going to be in the bot lane for Lost and Echoes.
It is interesting. I think that there's Huh.
Whoa. Yeah. Okay, well, it is in fact in the bot lane, but not for Lost and Echoes, because Nightmare's playing in the bot lane here in this series for Triple T. It is not how they are lined up by default. Normally, having to make that change, definitely surprising to see that role swap coming through. But at least, I mean, we got the players on at least who they were. Correct. It is in fact Lost and Echoes on the Azir, so we'll take that one. We'll take it.
What is interesting is Smelly Beef and Magnus Nicky, one in the top lane, one in the jungle. You really wouldn't have expected this character swap to come out the way it did, with the Wukong being in top lane and the Mundo being in the jungle. I mean, obviously this can work, but in traditional sense, you really are expecting that Wukong to be in the jungle. I mean, he's one of the strongest junglers in the current meta, and so with him in top lane, it certainly is going to be putting Kami-sama in a little bit of a loop, one would have to imagine. Poke as well, likely not expecting this matchup, but of course, this is how it did end up getting presented. And I don't know, right? I can't say I'm very familiar with the Wukong into Gnar matchup, but I'm sure that it should be fine for this Gnar.
I feel like it certainly has to be better than Mundo into Gnar, because the range from the Mundo also likes a lot more magic resistance to a champ, at least in lane, who loves auto attacking. Definitely not ideal, and this at least gets Mundo away from the Gnar. And the Skarner, especially early on, not all that great at invading. It will allow Magus Nicky on the Mundo to be able to scale up, to be able to be that completely unkillable monster that Mundo does eventually become. Obviously, it is a bit unconventional and unorthodox to see the Wukong in the top lane. I think the last time I've seen that played regularly was I had only heard legends of it when I started playing it around Season 8. So, it's been a hot minute since then.
As of now, still, are just getting a pretty standard game, as they are going to have a bit of an invade over towards the mid lane
Impact
now.
will land its way on to Haruki. Cratcher also roaming up at the same time. Haruki eventually going to flash away, takes about half their health in that gank as well. And on the Orianna, almost means certainly that TTT will be coming back mid in the near future.
Like we might be seeing this solo play with the Camille now bouncing down towards the bot lane. Seems like we might have had the Mundo trying to get a bit of an attempt in towards it, but instead they are going to opt up with Scuttle Crab to try and hit the level 5 sooner rather than later.
Smelly Beef, does he have lethal here? Trades of Flash, trying to follow down the play onto Kami, but won't quite find the kill just yet. Will force a recall though, eventually.
Still lots of players up in the top lane, and with the engagement coming through, it's still going to be RGG to come out on top. Maybe a little bit of overzealousness from Kami-sama to be able to stay in the engagement for a little bit too long, but Smelly Beef taking up to the top lane with this Wukong pick and doing spectacularly. Despite a bit of an unorthodox play, they look great and are now going to be able to have a bit of a gold lead leveraged against Kami-sama. With how this is currently working out,
Haruki getting ganked once again. No flash, but is able to respect the potential engage from Poke, standing back, seeding pressure in that lane to be able to survive said gank that was almost inevitably coming. But once again, we'll head to the top side of the map. Talking about no flashes, Kami-sama had to use it earlier, and now with nowhere to go, it'll be a very swift second kill going up to the top lane, this time claimed by Magus Nikki.
Yeah, that's definitely not the greatest spot to be in. Getting really aggressive pretty consistently. Kami-sama thinking that they're a lot more tanky than they actually are, and unfortunately for them, with a nearby jungler, they're going to just get burned down to a crisp. And so we'll finally be seeing the back from Smelly Beef, who's going to be able to get a little bit of extra gold per chance. But Kami-sama currently just doing their best to be able to stop the back all means necessary. And by them fishing in through the bush, they now have a little bit of security.
Didn't need to recall at all at full health. Dashes onto Kami-sama once again, bonking him on the head, take him down to 50% HP. It's gone from bad to worse to absolutely atrocious for Kami-sama. And so, that's definitely going to be looking up at that top lane for Smelly Beef and Magus Nikki to be able to scale up, especially the Mundo will be given full clearance on that top half of the map to be able to move wherever he pleases this early on is troublesome. However, with all this attention getting shown to the top side by Regicide Duskfall, Triple T's move on to the Drake and we'll get the first one of the game.
Really looming down towards bot lanes, and with the Camille coming into close contact, they might be able to make something here, but this is kind of the benefit you're going to get with the Yuumi. You do a lot of good job being able to take down a Cratcher with the slow that you get with the Yuumi Q. And so when you're able to take them down and kind of slow them for a second, it's going to cause a lot of their utility to become a lot more lackluster. The only issue is going to be arriving when we see something like...
We'll have another gank coming through from Magus, this time into the bottom lane. Nightmare, nowhere to go. The kill will be gifted over to Avo, and it quickly goes 3-0 to RGC.
Certainly is interesting, right? RGC in a position of power now, and we weren't really expecting this coming into this game, especially with Triple T currently looking to get that first place spot. If they lose this game, they're no longer going to be in the same contention as the other two teams with them in that. So certainly will become rough. We're going to be getting a lot more chaos in this bracket.
Cratcher going in, flashing, trying to find the stun on the hook shot. Not quite going to make the mark, but Nightmare does arrive. Eventually secures it for the side of the bot lane of Triple T. Getting the kill, but move up straight to the top side of the map. Gank coming through from Poke, trying to fight onto Smelly Beef, who does his best to trade it back onto Kami-sama. Unable to. Shutdown gets into the hands of the Gnar.
A complete turnaround from these past few minutes as 2 kills instantly translating. TTT now able to get this gold lead a little bit tied up. So with only 400 or so difference between these two teams, we can kind of see it on this great gold graph we got appearing up in the top of your screen. It was really looking to peak towards the 6.5 minute mark, but just a minute later, it's completely flipped the script. And now, I mean, yes, still TTT has not been able to leverage a lead by any means, and without that, they are certainly going to be in a bit of an uncomfortable position until they're able to fully turn around the game, but it's still looking good for them. They took this early Drake. They now have only around half the time for the next one, and with the Void Grubs coming up, they could try to fight for that as well. Now, of course, with their Skarner down in the bot side and the Mundo starting to path up towards top side, this could definitely become a little bit of a different situation. However, I mean, I don't think either team is going to be too unhappy with the state of the game right now.
Speaking of the Void Grubs, Poke was spotted out in the bottom half of the map, so that's the go that Nikki was looking for, to move straight onto the Void Grubs, especially when Smelly Beef has a push up in the top lane. And a recall coming through from Lost in Echoes. very comfortably give all 3 grubs over to the side of RGC, making a classic trade, though admittedly one that we don't necessarily see all too much these days, considering the spawn time difference for the first Drake and the grubs. It still eventually comes through here in game 1.
It certainly is an interesting turn of events. We'll see whether or not anything is going to change up in terms of the objective taking. Of course, TT having the first one uncontested, and then RGC taking the second one uncontested. So with this being a little bit of a rough spot for Triple T Fanclub, they're likely going to be next up trying to attempt to just get this bot lane under control. That way, in a minute, when that next Drake does come online, they'll have the priority in order to be able to succeed in that Drake taking while still having the minions crashing up against the tower. I don't know though, right? In terms of bot lane presence, I feel like it's so one-sided. TTT should be constantly in the driver's seat for this, to the point where I don't think RGC is going to ever really be able to contest these Drakes until that 15 to 20 minute mark.
Yeah, and it's definitely showing in the CS department. Almost 10 up before we get to that front. Smelly Beef getting ganked once again. First time was successful. Robe all the way up to the top lane from Crasher. Has access to the Hextech ultimatum. Smelly Beef can't go anywhere. Impale going to be flashed away from. Very patient from Smelly Beef to use that summoner spell at the perfect time to be able to escape.
That was absolutely absurd. The fact that the Impale barely missed by a hair, and so Poke unable to drag them into the rest of the team. And so now
I want to continue pushing on to Smelly Beef, though. Obviously, a lot of ultimates not quite used. I don't think this is exactly the angle for TTT to be able to fight for. Luckily, Nikki's on the other side of the map, pressuring out Nightmare as a result. So a complete overstay, not quite a threat for them, but considering how much they spent trying to find the kill on the Smelly Beef and not get it, it's not the ideal outcome for TTT. And we get a shuffle going under the turret. Shockwave response, gets Echoes very low, has to flash away. Final tonic from Haruki, not quite enough to find the kill. Ishtal impact from Poke comes through, flash forward, tries to get the slow smite, comes down. Auto attack is enough to secure the kill. But in all that time, RGC take the second Drake of the game.
And now with this somewhat engagement coming up towards the bot side, we can see this Camille sitting in close proximity, caught up by the ward. They're going to be able to break that, so they get a little bit of the vision denial, and over towards top lane once more. Kami-sama going to be able to start to ruin these minion chances with the next Drake already getting taken in such close or fast fashion. It goes equalization once more. RGC with one of their own taking the mountain. Seems like we're going to be getting this Cloud Soul upon us. And I think in terms of who that's going to favor, you really got to imagine RGC is going to be a little bit more interested in that. Evo especially, somebody who's going to thrive with movement speed.
Yeah, I mean, the Lightning Crash already gives you so much movement speed, especially when you have a Yuumi, but with the Cloud Soul on top of that, Evo is going to be going Mach 4 or faster. I mean, as well with the Orianna, that can also be used to give Evo more move speed. It will be zooming. However, as we had discussed earlier, we do expect the early advantage in pressure to be in the bot lane for the side of TTT, and so actually the gank from Poke to the mid lane, with how long it took and the fact that it gave RGC quite a bit of time to be able to take that second Drake, does release a lot of pressure on the side of RGC.
Currently, RGC is still fighting in the river. Both teams having a couple players taking over the extremities, and the engagement already including...
Hookshot hits the mark. Shockwave will slow down the advance, but only so much. The inevitable eventually arrives. Lost to Nekos will secure the kill, and as a result, TTT going to push in even further onto Magus. Nikki Cratcher all over the map to help out the rest of his team, as the blue buff of Magus Nikki gets taken away from him right under his own nose. Smelly Beef is starting to roam back down to try to help out his jungler. Cleaver hits the mark, will slow down Cratcher. Impale will hit too, but there's not quite enough of a followed up as Echoes arrives. Finally, Poke will get the kill onto Smelly Beef, and then eventually turn onto Magus Nicky, who's not quite unkillable yet, and TTT, despite the early start. After that fight, seems them almost 3k gold up.
Yeah, a complete resurgence from this team. Despite RGC taking really early kills, they do not get the chance to be able to contain this, and it certainly does seem like TTT is going to have a massive advantage throughout the rest of this game. We can see almost every single lead on each lane going the side of TT outside of the top side, where it is still pretty even, and that's mostly due to the fact that Smelly Beef has been able to have a very good job just being able to constantly work through the ganks that they've been helped with by Magus Nicky, and it's been able to help them get a couple extra kills. Kami-sama has had a little bit of a rough time, but of course, when you think towards how this late to end game is going to work itself out, Smelly Beef is going to have such a significantly harder time playing into that than somebody like Kami-sama, who is a much more tanky champion.
Yeah, it's at least in the mega form, but obviously as the window that NAR teams look to play around, and basically Kami-sama will be looking to be able to get these windows. The NAR ult, such a big tool to be able to win these team fights, and when you're sitting level in a matchup where you got counterpicked, I mean, you can't really ask for more than going level at this point. And now Kami-sama, having given that extra insurance from that fight at the top lane, will be looking to use it to survive. However, Smelly Beef pressing forward onto Kami does force him to back out quite a little bit, but can't really look for a full-on kill there, especially since you had Poke sitting around nearby and your jungler on the opposite side of the map won't quite look for more just yet.
And now with the Cyclone coming up towards top side, Kami-sama might just be in a bit of a tricky situation, but the counterattack gets
may have gone a bit too far. Kami-sama just autos him down, using that range advantage to its full effect. Smelly Beef pushes luck a little bit too far, will complete the Triforce on the death, however, so will get a fairly decent power spike as a result, but turn attention to the bottom side of the map. Gank coming through, Catcher and Poke on the flank, looking to save Nightmare before he can be killed. Lightning Crash secures it. Poke, the one to claim it, and the Impale will hit perfectly, brings Magus Nicky further under tower, and is lost in Echoes arrives. There's no hope for RGC. Lost in Echoes will round it out with a kill onto the Yuumi. 5k up, and just as quickly as it went RGC's way in the early game, TTT have come back around and are running away with game one.
Yeah, this has been such a resurgence, and of course this is exactly what we would have imagined, right? This is not a situation where you can really like just kind of work into matches. These two teams, they both need to be decisive. With how close every team is within this current standings, every game matters. It's not a situation where 2-1, 2-0 it means a very small amount, to the point where you're allowed to kind of take a little bit of a break on some of these games and just try and mount yourself into the next one. You really do have to be decisive in each and every one of them, and of course TTT is showing that now. They took a little bit of a slow start, but as soon as we have gotten in towards the mid game, they have completely changed up their play. Poke currently putting up a masterclass performance, as well as Lost in Echoes, both with a 8 KP and a 6 KP without a single death. Just an absolute absurd performance from both players, and TTT now taking the Herald too. This really does seem like this team has been able to figure out exactly how they're going to play into this game, and I don't know how RGC is going to be able to contest.
I mean, this early on, I don't think there is any choice for them but to give, being down 5k gold, and that is exactly the choice they go for. Wisely so, for being completely honest. There's no real world in which they can actually claim these objectives, but that's what they can do, is to try to find a play to the bot side of the map. And if you look at the movement on the minimap, it does look like that is what they're going for. Rift Herald obviously available for the side of TTT. They're not even going to try to use it as they go on to Smelly Beef. Pops the Cyclone, is able to trade a kill back in the 1v3.
Yeah, this is just a spectacular turn of events. RGC starting to look like they can
Lost in
maybe put up
Echoes.
some more effort.
may have been spotted out going a bit too far. Luckily is able to be relatively mobile there in the bottom lane to be able to escape, but all the while the counterplay from the side of RGC also going to be able to come through. Shutdown going into the hands of Avo especially will help them out quite a bit.
Yeah, that was a spectacular team fight from TTT, and they take one, but unfortunately for them, it's just not enough to really be too comfortable with it. They do start to merge this gold lead, so really good stuff from RGC to be able to get back into this game. And so as we are going to be looking at TTT, expecting them to be able to continue playing towards the same level of aggression that we've been seeing pretty consistently from them. The big question in my mind is RGC, how exactly are they going to be able to make the comeback, right? They already are looking good, but they need to be able to continue making these magical, heroic plays in a pretty consistent fashion. And unfortunately, I just don't see that being a very replicable thing. As of now, it really looks like TTT is just a stronger team overall with a little bit more in their playbook in terms of how well their depth is looking across their strategies that they're able to employ because of the fact that they are very dynamic across the map. And that's something that, yes, RGC has also looked good at, but it just hasn't been to the same degree in which RGC, yes, they've been able to play, but they just haven't been able to win. There's been good team fights, but I just need to see more in terms of being able to make them close out in a little bit more convincing fashion.
Certainly doesn't help that RGC has two E-subs in their lineup. I mean, they've even moved Magus Nikki to the jungle as a result of their emergency substitute situation. Actual Trash playing in support. So the not ideal situation for Regicide Duskfall to be playing into this one. Luckily, the coordination, at the very least in the last exchange cross map, looked okay, but other than that, for the most part, it definitely has been showing that they're just not quite dialed in on the same page that TTT has. And I mean, it really is unfortunate for them to be having to try to play this situation out this late into the season with so much on the line.
Yeah, it's been a rough season for everyone within the league, having to deal with so many upset games and with nothing being set in stone. It really has just continued to give this a very, very, I guess, just completely in the dark look of who's actually going to be the top teams. Because on paper, TTT, they're currently tied for it. They're up in the top 3 in terms of their win-to-loss ratio, but they still need to be able to decisively take 2-0s if they want to be able to stay in that contention. Because if they do lose 2-1, yes, that does still keep them alive, but it does become a little bit more dire for them.
Yeah, however, it would be funny if they lose, because hold that thought. Magus Nikki a bit too far forward, will have to pop the maximum dosage to be able to heal up, but has to use it early with the Drake spawning up. Not an ideal situation for RGC to be down on ult already, especially one that is so influential to be able to turn these fights around. They know Magus Nikki no longer has that huge pool of health in reserve. They will use Ishal Impact, gets the stun onto the wall. Look at the plate. Echoes trying to find it, won't even need it. Kami-sama starts off with an early kill onto Avo, quickly followed through. Poke also now will hit the Ishtal's impact onto the moving away Yuumi. Lost and Echoes on the wings now will be looking to claim the kill onto Haruki. Yet another one finds its way into the hands of the Azir. RGC do their best to be able to strike back, but in the end, it is another fight win going the way of TTT.
And Herald is going to go up towards mid lane. They let the Wukong survive for the time being, and instead looking to get this Drake down. And now with Soul Point on their own side of things, TTT certainly looking spectacular. They're going to take this next Scuttle Crab to be able to just get a little bit more XP on the mix. And it is unfortunate that the Herald did end up spawning, because it means that they weren't able to utilize that in the most effective manner now that the respawns happened on RGC's side, but they are still going to be able to take down the turret. It is unfortunate that they did have Cratcher be the one to take it down, seeing as they're likely the least gold efficient player on the team. You would have preferred somebody like Nightma to be able to take that, or maybe Kami-sama. But unfortunately, they are going to have their support be really, really ahead of the opposing support, which, of course, a character like Camille does have a really good job of being able to just completely carry the game, but it still is one of the less efficient characters on this team.
I mean, I feel like that's a bit nitpicky considering they are 5.5k gold up at this point and have found their way back into this position. Speaking of being up, Baron is live and available, still very early on and not exactly the fastest take from the side of TTTs. They will need a big fight to go their way to really be able to start up. Said big purple worm Smelly Beef trying to find a flank will be spotted out. So any attempt at a fight is snuffed out and backed away from.
Yeah, it's just backing up for now. Seems like they might end up looking for this Baron. Lots of players gathering around from both sides, but with your Gnar and Orianna in the bot side of the map, with both players having that teleport, it definitely could become an interesting position to see them trying to utilize that up towards the top side of the map. Now, though, we are going to be getting both teams evading that Baron, instead electing to take a more subtle approach, just trying to gather on the map, scale for the time being, gather CS, and as of now, neither team really having too much of a interest in trying to play for the objective up.
I mean, that's no surprise, really. Baron, very difficult objective to take, and obviously these days it doesn't give nearly as much gold as it once did. There's no like insane incentive unless you're insanely far behind, which RGC aren't quite there just yet to really try to force a flip at most points in a game, and either team necessarily has the fast take. Evo will help out a bit more for RGC to make their take a little bit faster, but I mean, all things considered, down 5k golds and also their 3 outer towers, the likelihood of that ever coming through, it's none. It's none. There's no chance of that happening, surely. So, whereas now as I say that, ask me again in 5 minutes when somehow it does come through. But yeah, I mean, mainly these two teams will be looking for the next Drake to spawn up, which is, of course, Soul Point for the side of TTT. They will be looking to pick up the Cloud Soul when it comes available.
Yeah, with the Cloud Soul being available in 90 seconds, it certainly is going to be something that both teams are going to have a little bit of interest in, with RGC not going to want for TTT taking that. Of course, TTT really going to want to try and take that. So RGC, we'll see whether or not they are going to inevitably be able to fight for it, as they are still doing the same situation we saw earlier with their top and mid just trying
this
to
would help out a lot if they could find a kill onto Smelly Beef. Exhaust goes down early, hook shot, stun hits the mark, won't quite find the kill in time, makes it a 1-for-1 trade, but look at the left side of your screen, another fight coming through. Teleports coming down to try to cut off the escape of RGC, but a 1-for-1 trade so far will mean it's relatively even. Support for top lane, though, going to slightly favor the side of TPT. Shockwave hits the narc onto Nightmare. Won't quite find the full-on kill, but does get the flash away from the Hui. Right as Drake is spawning in 30 seconds, might leave him a little bit vulnerable for this upcoming fight, in which Smelly Beef should be available for.
Yeah, a 5k gold lead at this point, and with the Drake now up in 20, certainly seems like RGC is going to be in a pretty uncomfortable position. They're going to need to wait for their Wukong to be able to respond, and Magnus Nicky now getting taken to a pretty rough angle as Poke starts.
Yeah, Impale going to hit the mark, and that's the go that TTT needs. They find the kill onto the jungler of RGC, and any hope of the Soul Point getting denied by RGC dies with Nicky. And so TTT will be zooming as soon as they press those ults.
Yeah, it's rough without your jungler, without your top laner.
But a good look from TTT to find a pick onto Echoes, who is found lost, trying to move over to the Baron, trying their best to make a greedy play on that front to make it 2 objectives on the side of TTT. Really well done by RGC to be able to smell that out.
And now Soul collected. RGC taking a little bit of a rough turn. And now with Kami-sama in the bot lane, going to be able to gather a plethora of gold by taking down this tier 2 turret, getting a little bit of minions. Nobody really goes to match them. They realize the fact that there's not a big likelihood of Kami-sama trying to fight even further in the Nexus arena, but as RGC starting to come on in, TTT definitely going to be put into a little bit of a rough spot around this Baron pit.
Yeah, but still a 5k gold lead, even though they don't have the positional advantage and are fighting their way in. They obviously have the Scuttle Crab there. They've got plenty of vision on what RGC are doing, so they're not in really sort of situation where they need to really be panicking around a potential Baron take, we're being completely honest. So they're absolutely fine with that passage of play. And, well, I guess they're generally fine with the last few passages of play. I mean, they've got the Baron completely lit up. They have a 5k gold advantage. They'll be able to utilize the extra towers they have up to be able to push RGC even further back and make it hard to walk up to the Baron, especially from the blue side of the map going towards the Baron. It is so much more difficult to be able to walk into it when you don't have the extra wall protecting you on your advance.
Now fighting up towards the top side of the map, it certainly could become a Baron play with very few opponents in a good spot to be able to contest them. But for the time being, they are still going to be staying static around this river part of things. With
No beef, going to find a Cyclone in onto Echoes. Emperor's Divide going to be casted immediately to get the Wukong away. Trade of ultimates with, at least at this point, fairly low cooldowns, which should be back up if anything does happen around the Baron, unless if it starts instantly. Teleport still available for those two members in the bottom lane currently to arrive should something break out, though really at this point I doubt anything of note should come through. Just a little bit of poking and prodding. Nicky's so tanky, even if he is the one to walk up forward like this, it's going to be difficult to find a kill onto the Mundo.
Still seemingly like a Baron play might be enacted with a few players coming in nearby. Magnus Nikki now without their spell shield gonna be able to pick it back up straight in towards the jungle. And now RGC continuing to stay a little bit close in contact. They now go for a couple backs, looking to try and just pilot across the map, not necessarily having anything too decisive in mind with their top side going down towards the bot lane. They've had a decent bit of success against Lost and Echoes before. Unfortunately, recently, it's been a bit of a different story as the tail really starting to shift well for this RGC squad. They're not having too many mistakes being made recently. They're not giving over objectives recently, and they're kind of just giving themselves a good position to play in.
Yeah, and on that front, there is a bright spot for RGC. It is the fact that Avo is on 4 items as the Zeri doesn't quite have the Fiend Hunter bolts just yet before he gets that Haruki caught out. Will go golden, try to buy time to survive. Impale not quite going to hit the mark. Survives long enough to get to the safety of Avo, who gets the first kill. Haruki finally goes down. Pokey the one to get the kill, goes godlike, but Cyclone hits 2. Gnar finds a stun, but Avo gets a shutdown on to the Azir and still moving around at Mach 7 speeds. Triple kill for Avo, allowed to kite so easily when you have the Yuumi to help you out. Poke going to be in a lot of trouble. Will be able to use the Ishtal's impact to get over the wall, but a triple kill for Avo, and the mid lane tower going in favor of RGC. Nightmare teleports mid, does have quite a lot of damage, chugs Smelly Beef a lot, slowly ticking down. The burn finally comes through. Nightmare to get the kill, ult not quite going to hit the mark. Poke diving in deep, trying to kill off Avo, but without the spiraling despair, RGC is more than comfortable to be able to try to follow through, but Crasher going deep, will use the Hextech ultimatum onto Avo, will lock him in place. Finally, the kill drops onto the Zeri. Luckily, Yuumi able to jump onto Magus Nikki. It takes a lot of the health bars of TTT to be able to find the kill. They also lose Crasher in the process. They send a lot of teleports mid to maybe try to find the extremely low Magus Nikki, unable to do so. and a really extended fight that I've honestly lost track of how many kills went their way, but considering the gold lead and the gold lead being diminished on the side of TTT, and that the triple kill went into the hands of Avo, regardless of the total terms of trade of kills, RGC does not mind either way.
Yeah, this is certainly looking rough for the side of TTT with a long, drawn-out, scrappy fight going against them. Now with the gold lead starting to get punished pretty heavily. Of course, they had the bounties, meaning every single kill that went against them, even if it was a trade, still loses gold in terms of their total. But now with RGC coming in close contact with the Elder up, this becomes a perfect opportunity for them to be able to get back into this game.
Nightmare hit by the shockwave, shut down Haruki out of the blue. Numbers advantage to RGC with the Elder Drake up and available. No way for TTT, means there's, well, very little way for them to be able to get into this Elder Drake. A huge buff, very likely to go the way of RGC, and with the amount of scaling that they have in AVO across the team, despite the 2.5 gold lead that TTT has, despite that they were up almost 6k gold at one point in this game, RGC have the advantage. Baron is up and available. TTT trying to make a tempo play around it, down to 4k now. Smite comes through. Baron traded to the side of TTT, so it won't be for nothing. But the Elder Drake off the map will certainly delay things for the side of RGC, and when they have the scaling of Zeri and the Mundo, they're going to be feeling quite all right with that trade. And no Smelly Beef's going looking for a bit more. Echoes removed immediately. Avo to find the kill. Impale will slow the advance, getting the Impale onto multiple. Nightmare has a chance to chunk through. Avo, a big source of power from RGC is gone. Shockwave is massive from Haruki to turn it around, but a double kill will get into the hands of Nightmare, making it a 3-2 trade advantage of RGC, pushing forward even farther now, taking down the inhibitor. But TTT finding the kill onto Avo is absolutely crucial to ensure that game one keeps going.
Yeah, I mean, this has been just complete turnaround for RGC from being down and out in this game to now practically taking a phenomenal win, honestly. I mean, they got the Elder, they now equalized the gold, and as we kind of can note, there's a lot more, I guess, momentum starting to shift in their favor as well. At TTT, they have been in a pretty losing position for the past 10 minutes or so, and so we're getting to a point really where they have to be able to make some kind of comeback, or else TTT likely going to be losing this game one, and RGC, I mean, we alluded to it before, you lose game one, you're already in a pretty big deficit.
Yeah, and I mean, considering how much it means, TTT are, in terms of match score, tied for first, but across tiebreakers have the worst of the three in terms of game scores, so currently sit third place overall. A loss here for them would make their likelihoods of being that first seed, to give them the best advantage possible, was diminished quite a lot. It would be completely reliant on Spire Rats losing, as well as Akuma Spikers in their series against Moonlight Spire and Queen's Secret respectively. Not exactly the position they would have been hoping for. That is assuming things stay the way they have been, at least considering these last few fights lost, and Echo goes golden. Does dodge out the shockwave damage, but shockwave much shorter cooldown at this point. So overall, I'd say advantage RGC in that affair.
At this point, with the TTT squad certainly starting to lose out a lot of the momentum, it's Avo who's got the majority of the gold lead that this RGC squad has been able to collect, and we are getting to a point for sure where the gold not necessarily mattering. Avo already on 4 items, a phenomenal spot to be in.
5
and
items.
Oh yes, 5 items. I don't know why I was including the boots in that, but yeah, I mean, it was just been looking spectacular so far, and that's certainly something that is going to be likely a big factor coming into the remainder of this game. Of course, Nightmare on the other side of things still doing good, but especially seeing as Evo likely gonna have the Guardian Angel online relatively soon, that alone is going to be a big enough tool to kind of impact the state of the game. And I don't know, like in terms of just full team fight compositions, I've been liking how TTT has been playing. I think Cratcher has been doing a spectacular job utilizing their Hextech ultimatum to be able to isolate picks and then have just the rest of the team start to completely collapse on them. Same thing with players like Poke, who's been doing great with the Impale. On the other side of things, yes, we've been seeing a really good job from players like Smelly, who's been doing great with the Cyclone to be able to disrupt the opponent's play and just get into the back lines and start harassing pretty consistently. But overall, I feel like just generally, yes, this RGC team has been better individually, but in terms of a team fight play, I think that I favor TTT still.
I mean, Evo has the most gold in the game, and I think a large part of how these team fights are going to go is if TTT can find a kill onto Evo before they can quickly run around, heal back up with the likes of the Yuumi, and the amount of shielding with, you know, the Yuumi and the Orianna available, and also the healing from the BT as well will be quite impactful if Evo can, well, obviously do the damage in those fights. It'll be a very difficult ask to be able to kill off this Zeri, but if TTT can do it, it is almost certainly a fight win for them, barring an absolutely miraculous shockwave from Haruki. So that will be who they are looking for. They do have quite a few tools to be able to find them, though. Emperor's Divide, Shurima Shuffle, the one easy way to do it. Poke obviously can forcibly pull them back. Kami-sama has an in on a jump, but we've got a lot of folks around this next LJ coming up in 30 seconds. Teleport getting used early by the side of RGC. Smelly Beef going to have the shield from the Empowered Teleport, and the move speed won't use that angle to rush in onto TTT, showing good patience. Cratcher doing his best to try to find a hook shot in onto Evo, who's done well to recognize out the plate. Impale's going to hit one. Shockwave lands onto Kami-sama and Nightmare, and the ult used now by Evo will survive the Hextech ultimatum, kept perfectly alive. Haruki gets the first, and with the organization of RGC, they will quickly run down the rest of this fight. Poke slowly getting poked down by Evo, jumps over the wall, shields himself up, but the shutdown inevitably comes through. Evo picks up yet another kill, and the side of RGC will push forward onto the Nexus Towers. They have the minions in the base to try to hold this one down. Nightmare luckily does quite a bit of damage to be able to clear out these waves, so the wave now gone for RGC onto these Nexus Towers. They'll survive a little bit longer, wait for the next wave to be able to come through. Respawn's coming in 25 seconds for Lost in Echoes. Can they hold long enough? Cyclone goes forward, finds its way onto 2. Cratcher will do their best to buy space for the rest of the team, and they do, in fact, do that. Traded back around to make it 1-for-1. Narv hits the ult, gets way onto Haruki, but Nightmare not close enough to be able to follow up. Haruki's perfectly fine.
I'm taking